All right, so we have the next episode in the Sneako versus MoistCr1TiKaL saga, in which they have an extended conversation debating the age of consent. And given a multitude of recent events, I think it's a debate worth having because it seems like a lot of people don't have strong foundational beliefs about the age of consent or interacting with minors. I think it's probably something that we could stand to nail down a little bit. I'm expecting 70 IQ takes from Sneako. However, he has given this topic quite a bit of thought, possibly more than any other topic, oddly enough. Charlie, on the other hand, as intelligent as I'm sure he is, certainly isn't the final debate boss on the internet. And while I think we all have strong feelings on this topic, I think very few people would be able to give a strong defense for their position to an opposing party over a long conversation, just kind of at the drop of a hat. I'm not sure like how much actual prep that he did for this, but even with some prep time, just your average person is going to have a hard time debating anything in general, much less the age of consent. So I'm expecting like some common sense takes from Charlie, but not necessarily a strong defense that's going to stand up to the kind of holes that Sneako is going to try to poke in that defense. Sneako is going to be coming at this from a religious point of view as a Muslim. Charlie, I'm not sure if he subscribes to any religion or not, but from the clips I've seen, it seems like he's approaching the issue from a secular point of view. I'm going to give my reaction to it. Hopefully, as someone that spent most of their life as a Christian and who is now a atheist and secular humanist, I spent a lot of time thinking about my system of morality. You know, when you go from basing your morality off of the Bible and stuff, and then you no longer believe that, you have to think, okay, well, what do I believe now? Where does my morality come from? That's something I've spent a lot of time thinking about. I feel like I have a pretty solid foundation for my morality these days and can explain it well. So hopefully I might be able to fill in some of the gaps that Charlie leaves with his explanations. And I'm just going to kind of give some raw reaction to it as well. So let's get into it.
Let's talk about what we came to talk about.
Yeah, man. So with all of what's going on here, why are you so insistent on like the age of consent being like unreasonable? Or at least that's the impression I and most people gather from the way you speak about it.
So that's a great first question. Like, why is this a topic of discussion in the first place? Why are we talking about this at all? That's a good first question.
That's a valid question, and I want to first ask, like, what's your issue with my opinion on the age of consent, age of marriage?
Because I feel like age of consent should just be an accepted number, and I think the accepted one is 18. Like, regardless of where you talk about in the world, I feel like once you start talking about someone under 18, you're basically just talking like a predator. Like, I feel like 18 is a pretty well-established number for most sensible people. At 18, you're going to college, you're living your own life now, you're outside of your family nest. Anything under that, you're still a kid.
So I would have pressed him first to just answer that question instead of returning another question. It's a, like he said, it's a valid question. Why are we talking about this? And from Sneako's point of view, from what I remember, he had some iffy ideas about the age of consent or about underage people before his Islam arc. But now that he's into it, he seems to have taken special interest in it. One of the big things in anytime you go into like apologetics with Islam is going to be the pedophilia stuff. The stuff with Muhammad marrying like a 6-year-old or a 9-year-old. I can't remember how old she was. You kind of have to defend that. And technically there's no age of consent in the Quran. There's no age of consent in the Bible either. And so there's just a lot of avenues you can go down with that as far as like objective morality. Secular people can say, based off of science and data and studies, we can see that, it's around the age of 18 is a good idea to be on the safe side of protecting children and protecting people from abuse and stuff like that. On the religious side, especially for Muslims and Christians, you're kind of arguing that it's the level of maturity and being able to like bear children that makes it acceptable for someone to marry and sleep with someone under 18. And really, at that point, it becomes ambiguous. And while there may have been like some truth to that back in the day, I think still that was not ideal. But also, even if there were scenarios in which that could be possible, it also leaves open a lot of scenarios where you have people just deciding that 12-year-olds, 11-year-olds, 10-year-olds are mature enough. It happens all the time where we see creepy-ass uncles telling their nieces that they are very mature for their age and all that kind of shit. And so they're really kind of, it's really ambiguous as to where they set like the age of consent or like their morals and ethics around children or, you know, people under the age of 18. And so for some reason, Sneako has just really latched on to trying to defend a religious position on this. And we'll see how well he does here.
Okay. You know, it's not 18 in most of the United States where we both live, right?
Yeah, but that refers to like Romeo and Juliet laws, where if you're like 19 and with a 16-year-old, it's not technically illegal, but you're not a 19-year-old, right? So why would you be arguing for like a 16,
Well,
you know?
first off, I'm not arguing to lower the age of consent. I don't believe in the age of consent. We can get there. I want to establish some terms first.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, it's not even just with Romeo and Juliet laws. There's a lot of states where it's 16 regardless of Romeo and Juliet. And then you go to Europe, most.
This is true. And then also there are several states, I want to say like maybe 10 to 12 states still, where they have like child marriage laws where you can marry a 12-year-old if the parents are consenting, if the child's consenting, and that is disgusting. And people who still kind of practice that are often of the Mormon persuasion.
Countries are 16. Japan, I think they just changed it. It was like 13 or 14, and now it's 16.
And so arguing from a place of like legality is not smart because, like you said, it is kind of arbitrary. So what you want to do is kind of build a case from logic, data, stats, common sense, and then say, you know, in the interest of protecting people, regardless of what the law is, regardless of how it varies from state to state and country to country, I personally think 18 is a good rule of thumb and is a good cutoff legally for us.
Brazil, it's 14. I saw that from a Nelk Boys video. They were joking around about how they should, like, when in Rome, they're in Brazil, so they might as well sleep with a 14-year-old, right? Or across the world, 18. I want to see, like, why do you think 18 is the age of consent?
Because that right now is the one that makes the most sense. I guess to piggyback off what you're saying, so if you're traveling right now, if you go to Europe,
it makes the most sense in our culture just because in society, pretty much everything is built off of you kind of becoming an adult at 18. And, you know, you are finished with school, you are going into college, you're able to go into the workplace. There's a lot of things that change at 18. And in Sneako's case, he's arguing not for, you know, casual relations, but with being able to marry someone under 18. And in my mind, that is like you're still going to be having sex with them. And also it is a much bigger thing to be locked into or a thing to experience than just casual sex. And it would also be much more detrimental to the person. you haven't even started to really know who you are as an adult yet, to be able to make those decisions. It would be like, just think about picking one job and locking yourself into that for the rest of your life at 15, 16. That would be miserable. And then on top of that, still having those sexual relations with someone older, but also being thrust into having to no longer be a child or a teenager or experience life that way. You are now a wife. You are now someone's partner for the rest of your life.
Are you going to be comfortable like hooking up with a 16-year-old? Like, just because it's legal there, would that make you feel comfortable?
No, I don't hook up anymore. I'm not saying that you.
So here he's not really able to engage with that hypothetical at all. And it's really frustrating. It's like, asking somebody like, how would you feel if you didn't eat breakfast this morning? And they're like, well, I did eat breakfast. It's like, okay, what if you didn't? And they're like, well, I did. So I don't know. It's like, it's just, there's no engagement with a hypothetical there. That's really frustrating.
Do, but I'm saying, if you were, single and looking for someone, would you feel comfortable with it being a 16-year-old if it's in Europe versus US?
I wouldn't do that. Like, I would not have sex before. I think sex, like, out of wedlock altogether is something that we should not encourage anymore. And having the age of consent, having that idea encourages people to have premarital sex, right? Just that term, age of consent, means you're consenting to something that we shouldn't be doing. So no, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that.
Okay, so then instead of let's take it away from like premarital sex, would you feel comfortable marrying a 16-year-old? Like, would you meet a 16-year-old with romantic intent if you're in Europe and maybe marry a 16-year-old? Nothing sexual.
I probably wouldn't personally, because I don't think that I'd be on the same mental playing field. I like to have intellectual conversations. I like to be with women that are around my same age.
So here he's admitting that there is a significant mental difference between someone who is 16 and someone who is like in their mid-20s.
Because then I can have conversations I like to relate to them. I think there'd be too much of a gap. But other people, like, if they're able to get along, then I don't see why that's so much of a problem.
But why don't you see that as a problem? So for you, you're recognizing like, this person's much younger than me. It is a kid. Like, you are talking to. Okay, so
let's define these terms. Let's
in high school.
Before we even get into, let's define these terms before we even get into this conversation. What is a child?
I would use the age of consent. Under 18 would be a kid in my eyes.
So a 17-year-old who's 364 days, that's a kid?
Yep, I'm gonna use very hard set terms. If it is under 18, even if it's 17, 364, that's still a kid.
That's a kid. Okay,
I think it's important to have these hard lines in the sand where it doesn't have this kind of wiggle room.
Okay, why does that define kid?
As I said earlier, at 18, at that point, you're going out of high school, you're going to college, you're living on your own, you're no longer, a child under your parents' roof, for the most part, extenuating circumstances, of course, but at that age, you are starting to become independent. You are no longer just in your parents' household a kid. You are now going off into the world on your own.
You do admit that varies for most people, right? A lot of people don't move out of their parents' homes until they're 25, 26, 27. A lot of people don't.
There's nothing wrong with that.
A lot of people graduate high school 16. A lot of people graduate high school 20. It's a huge variable. So to set that in stone as that this is when you're a kid and this is you're an adult, that doesn't apply to most people. So why would you define a kid and an adult if it doesn't apply to most people?
So back in the day, I don't think back in the day, there was just like kind of 2 or maybe 3 phases in life. You have childhood, and then it goes directly into adulthood. So, like for Jewish people, you have your bar mitzvah, and then at 13, and then you are a man. And there's a lot of other cultures that have like certain ceremonies at a certain age where you cross over into being a man. And I think as we have evolved, as we have learned more, I think we kind of delineate more between, you have like childhood, and then you have like after puberty, you have kind of your teenage years, and then sometime around 18, you kind of develop into adulthood, and you are still developing until like your mid to late 20s, and then there are other phases you go through in life after that. And so I don't know that I would like hardline say that like someone who is 17 and 364 days old is a child, and then the next day they were an adult. But they're still a teenager. They're still a minor, and I think it's easy to kind of bite the bullet that like somebody who is 19 sleeping with someone who is 17 and 364 days is probably not immoral. It's probably not unethical. There's probably not going to be any like damage done there. And so, yeah, I mean, like we admit to the delineation being somewhat arbitrary, but it's important for people's protection that we divide it somewhere. And 18 seems to be a good dividing point. And it's better to err on the side of protecting minors versus protecting older people's right to fuck minors.
Because it needs to be defined. Otherwise, you can get into this really gray area where you, like a lot of the things you say, can be misconstrued as you wanting to have sex with a 15, 16-year-old.
Who construed that?
A lot of people, because I mean,
I don't think
in your
anybody
clips
thinks
that
that.
I played in the video, you were
no
saying
way.
like the age of maturity, the age of development, and then you use 16 and 17 in that clip.
So
like, for the age of marriage.
The definition of an adult is 18 years old.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fine establishment right there. Anything under 18 would classify as a kid. I think that's important.
Okay, but you're getting that from what? From personal experience, from the government, from the law? Because that's legally in America, that's when you become an adult, correct?
Yeah, legally.
So you're following the government's definition of an adult.
I think there needs to be a definition, and that one's been around for a long time, and I think that's the one most people accept as the closest to, like, yeah, this is when you become an adult.
It actually hasn't, right? 200 years ago in the 1800s in America, the age of marriage...
Yeah, we can't live like that. We're so much more advanced than that. Why would we play by those rules? Because at that point...
I don't know if there was ever a point in history where marrying a 10-year-old was looked upon favorably. I think that was still probably looked down upon in most societies. But people definitely did used to get married younger back in the day. And a lot of it was due to necessity. And a lot of things has changed. I think that time, I think we can all acknowledge a lot of that, what went down during those times, and a lot of what were customs during those times was not ideal, and probably did cause a lot of damage to people, a lot of harm to people, and lock them into relationships and a life that, given other options like we have today, they would much rather have. And so a big part of this is respecting people as autonomous beings and respecting their agency to be able to grow to a certain point of maturity, or to give them a lot of safety room to experiment with things, to be able to make choices that are bad and mess up, and have a safety net there of, not having to be locked into certain decisions for the most part. And then, after you reach that age of maturity, I think you still need to be careful and smart about your decisions in life, and people should work hard to not take advantage of others. But at some point, you have to start taking responsibility for the choices that you make. And if you make a bad choice and lock yourself into something terrible, then you have to deal with the consequences of that. But until you reach that certain point of maturity, I think it's really unfair to give people the option to lock minors into something as permanent as a marriage. When they don't understand that, they don't understand the importance of that. I think a lot of people, even in their mid-20s, don't really understand the significance of marriage or what it's going to be like. But, at some point, you got to take responsibility for those choices. But as a child, as a younger person, I don't think that they should be expected to take responsibility for choices like that or even make choices like that. It is not a safe thing to do or a good thing to do. And I think most people would agree with that. There's a lot of red pill dudes that are like, and like the thing is they want to get someone when they are very young and naive and don't know who they are yet, so that they can mold them into who they want them to be, so that they don't come with preconceived notions of autonomy and who they are. It's really easy to get them to believe that their purpose in life is to be my partner, is to serve me. And there's so many bad stories that come out of, especially like the Mormon religion, should tell us that this is not a good thing. And Islam as well.
Are you going to start arguing that we should be able to start wedding 12-year-olds? Like, is 12 too young?
That's not the point. I'm saying, you're saying that the U.S. defined adult as 18. Well, I'm saying 200 years ago, the age of marriage in America was 10 and the UK was 7. Right? So if the government decides to change it, you're saying it's 18. If the government, maybe if Kamala Harris gets elected, then the new legal age of an adult is 25. And there could be reasons to say that. They graduated college. They don't leave the house until this age. Their brains don't develop until they're 25. Your frontal cortex is not fully developed until you're 25 years old. A lot of people aren't making serious money. They're not able to live independently. A lot of things that you could use to classify an adult don't happen for the new age American until 25 years old. So if Kamala Harris raised it to 25, would you then say that that's the new age? Would you agree with that?
So I think our laws are always downstream from our morals and ethics as a nation. And so it's because as a nation, morally, we decided 18 is a good benchmark for maturity that we made those laws. If they ever changed, presumably it's going to be for a good reason. There's going to be, because you have to bring a good argument for changing laws most of the time, and everybody has to agree on it, or majority at least. So if it did get raised or lowered, it would be because as a majority, our nation believed that that was a good law to make. It's not arbitrary that, like, okay, the government just changes something and then we all change according to that. It's usually we all collectively believe something and then we decide to enshrine that in law. And so that hypothetical there, like, yeah, I mean, you would still have to obey the law, but I would still believe that 18 is a good benchmark for the age of consent.
I think that'd be totally understandable. Like,
Right.
I think that's fine.
So
Like,
then does
if
that
you-
make
if you
so then does that make anybody who sleeps with an under 25-year-old, does that now make them a pedophile?
No, I don't think necessarily that makes them a retroactive pedophile.
So
by
then
any
what's a
means,
pedophile?
But it's an accepted definition of 18 for a long time. Is
Not
the
for that long.
agreed-
This is a bad argument on Charlie's point. Like, that's he could have definitely made a better argument there. And I'm by no means a good debater or good at forming arguments, but
upon.
Not for that long, and not through most states, and not through most countries across the world.
Do you see why this is like a weird take to have though? Like I don't think you're coming at this from a place of you wanting to fuck a 15-year-old, are you? To go back to that question, is 12 too young? Do you think 12 is too young?
I think 12 is too young for me. Yes.
Well,
Again, he's not engaging honestly with the question. And the honest answer for his belief is that if the 12-year-old had gone through puberty, and if the parents, the child, and the adult who wanted to marry the child all agreed that the child was mature enough, then it would be okay in his mind for them to get married. That's his belief, but he really shies away from that. He likes to put the age around 15, 16.
for you, do you think 12 is too young in general? I feel like that should be an easy answer.
12 is too young in general, correct? Because,
Okay.
yes.
And I don't
But
think you're
I want
coming
to
at this
I want to
from that
define,
angle.
but what you're saying, your definition of adult is not even the actual definition. Do you know what the definition of child is? Like anybody watching this can Google it. You can Google it too. The definition of child is somebody who has not reached puberty yet. That's the definition.
Yeah, and then you get into like the abibophile or whatever as opposed to pedophile, and those are all.
I don't know. I have no idea what those terms are. I don't know what that is, but I'm saying that's the actual definition. When somebody reaches maturity, it's based off of biological and physical maturity.
Okay. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
So
right
so
now,
so it varies for everybody. Adulthood is not something that you can set in stone because it's different for the entire world. Right?
Right, and that's true. And I think that putting it at 18 is a good conservative, point. It's like saying, where does your head start? Is it like right here? Is it here? Does it include your neck? Is it up to your ear? Where exactly does your head start? And the rest of your body, where does it end and where does the rest of your body start? What all includes your head? And so, it is a little bit arbitrary, and it might be a little different for everybody with the proportions, same thing. And so, like, morally, I think we can all admit that like a 19-year-old, an 18-year-old, almost 19, dating a 17-year-old, there's probably nothing bad morally about that. But for the safety of the majority of people, it is better to just have that hard line in the sand. And it's just much better for them to be interacting with and having relationships with people within their own age range, especially that young. Year over year, you are developing very, very quickly and making very big leaps in development from the moment you hit puberty to 18. And so dating people with very near to your own age group during that time period is best. You're growing together, you're learning together, and it is just very, very easy for an older person to take advantage of that lack of development. And it's just better to err on the side of protecting younger people.
I moved out when I was 14. A lot of people don't move out until they're 25. I went through puberty when I was 17. A lot of people went through puberty when they were 13, 14, 15. It changes for everybody. So for you to say that this is the set in stone age and say you're a pedophile if it's under 18, and then if you're over 18, you're fine. Well,
so Sneako is acknowledging the arbitrariness of the age of consent, and it is somewhat ambiguous and arbitrary. But his position is that it should be based off of vibes, honestly. That as long as the person has gone through puberty, and as long as everyone involved feels like they are mature enough, which is incredibly subjective, then it's okay for them to get married to someone of really any age, as long as everyone's consenting and everybody thinks that they're mature enough. He thinks that the government should not be involved in that at all. And so to me, that is way more arbitrary, way more subjective, and way more likely to cause harm and damage to people.
Then that's a weird line that doesn't make sense. So you're going to say this person is a terrible person if they're 17 years old, 364 days, and right after that they're good to go. Well, it changes for everybody. So we have to have something, a definition. We have to be realistic with everybody. Well, we don't. But you're saying we, but that's not even the case in the country we live in.
Why argue against it? If you don't want the age of consent to be lowered, why are you making arguments that the same people who do make? Right now, what you're saying is kind of what NAMBLA used to say, if you're familiar with NAMBLA.
I have no idea what this is.
NAMBLA was the North American Man-Boy Lover Association. They were
Right,
a
because
pedophile group.
these people they want to have sex to take advantage, and they don't abide by the rules of marriage. They don't have any sort of morality. They just want to have. I'm arguing for this because I believe in marriage. Sex should only be within wedlock. That's why I'm talking about this.
So, like in Sneako's ideal scenario, an ideal world, every man that marries a child, someone who is a minor, they are doing it for purely noble and righteous intentions. They will only ever treat their child bride with love and respect and honor and dignity. And, it'll just be the perfect ideal picture of a traditional marriage. But again, we have examples in the Mormon church, in Islam, in there's certain Christian sects, very small Christian sects in America that do child marriage. We've seen how horrendous those turn out. And those are the people who, Sneako would say are trying to be righteous about it. That would also open the door for so many people who just... the majority of it would be people who are looking to take advantage. And so while it is taking advantage to sleep with someone underage, it is so much more taking advantage to marry someone underage. That just seems clear to me. Because not only are you sleeping with them once, you are locking them in to sleep with you for the rest of their lives. And to serve you for the rest of their lives. And to not give them any other options for their life. That's the world that Sneako wants.
You can't allow the government to determine morality because it changes all the time. Tomorrow, if the U.S. government legalized bestiality, if the government legalized incest, based off your logic, there'd be no reason why that's wrong. Can I ask you, Moist, do you think that incest is wrong?
Yes.
Why is incest wrong?
There is under no circumstances any excuse for anyone of the same bloodline to be romantic like that. By no means at all.
Why?
So the answer here is that it's a lot of people. The answer a lot of people give is obviously like your kids can be messed up, but as I've seen a clip as Nico's going to say, it could be to gay brothers. You can use a condom, whatever it may be. Like what harm is being done there, and the answer is that there is just a super high likelihood that there is going to be a traumatic outcome from that. So just like, it's an interesting like thought experiment to have. And it's one that we don't really think about that much. As with the age of consent, like it's not something we really in our day-to-day lives or just at any point in our life that we've like really sat down and thought through the morality of incest or age of consent. It's just something we kind of take for granted and take at face value. But if you really sit down and think about it, it's like, okay, well, what's actually morally wrong about it? And from a secular point of view, my position would be that there's just there's pretty much no situation where there's not going to be some sort of power imbalance there, where there's not going to be some sort of trauma that comes out of that. You're never going to be able to have a normal, like healthy relationship with that person. It is going to follow you for the rest of your life. There's just no world in which a good outcome comes from that. And so it's something that, we have decided is taboo and is something that is not to be done. generally for the overall well-being of society and for people.
I really think it should be pretty obvious why.
I don't know why. I'm asking you.
Even I know where you're going with this because I've heard this argument from another streamer before about like the ethics of incest. If they don't have a kid and thus don't pass down like bad genes that lead to a bad child. I've heard this before.
But I want to hear your answer, because are we going with legal, or are we going to follow some sort of morality,
it is
some
both.
sort of consistent morality? Why is incest wrong?
Incest is wrong because I believe that no family dynamic should ever include a sexual relation.
Why?
I don't think that, because it is not healthy. It is a bad thing to do. It is a horrible thing to subject someone to.
But why is it horrible? Because who told you that?
It's what I believe. And also, if you do have a child with your own kin, the child suffers.
Okay, but say it's two gay brothers. Chris Tyson and other Chris Tyson and Chris. If they're two brothers and they decide to be in a no, genuine question. It's what you believe in. I want to figure out where your beliefs come from. You personally believe that.
My beliefs come from a place of what I believe to be more.
So yeah, like I found that most just like people who aren't in the habit of debating or like discussing morality, who aren't religious, just have a hard time really explaining where their morals come from. And it's something that I've given a lot of thought to coming away from Christianity, to think, okay, well, what's going to be my foundation for why I believe what's right and wrong now? And really it comes down to, learning from, data, science, studies, statistics, society, of what we know to be best for individuals and for society to thrive and for human well-being, and then what is bad for individuals and society and human well-being. And there's going to be a lot more nuance there. There's going to be a lot more discussion there versus just saying, I do what the Bible or the Quran tells me, and that's that. And then, that in itself is also subjective, because, it's based off of whatever God says, and God could say something totally different. So it's subjective on him. And then it's also subjective because, all we know from God is what he has put in the Bible. And there is a lot of disagreement on all kinds of things in the Bible, on what things are moral or immoral. And it really is based on how you negotiate with a text, how you interpret it, and then how you apply it. Lots of different Christians and Muslims come to different conclusions on certain areas of morality. And so I think even if there is some sort of objective morality out there that's like separate from us, separate from, anything that we have control over, I don't know if we're ever going to know what that is. Because writing it down in a book that doesn't address all areas of morality is just a terrible way to give us that objective morality, if that is what it is. And so, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's really no such thing as objective morality. A lot of Christians like to say that, you can't say that anything's right or wrong if you don't have an objective foundation. But that's just not true. We have a foundation. They just don't like it. Or, if it's not like God saying this is right, this is wrong, then, who is anyone to say what's right or wrong? But it's pretty easy, and it's going to change. It's going to be subjective over time. But ideally, we're always evolving and trying to make things better, and more moral and ethical throughout time. It's going to be times when we fall back some and miss the mark. There's going to be times when we do really well. And That's been the case with religion as well. A lot of things in Christianity and Islam have changed over the years, as I said before, where things have modernized, where they don't support child marriage anymore. They don't support slavery anymore. They don't support, for the most part, genocide and conquering other nations and killing everyone in a nation except for the young women and taking them for wives. Not something we do anymore.
Moral, where I don't believe that anyone in the same family has any position to be romantic with one another. I don't think
So
that's a
your
healthy
morality
dynamic.
comes from yourself?
My morality comes from like the world around me. I don't have.
Okay, so
brothers or
if
sisters
the
or anything
morality
like
comes
that.
from the
So-
world around you, then by your logic, if you lived in America in the 1800s where the age of 10 was okay, and where the age of 7 was okay in England just 200 years ago, if you followed the world around you, that would be okay. That was fine.
And it's not now because we've evolved past then. Like
Right.
we are significantly further along to recognize this was a bad thing. People
Right, and according to Sneako's logic, back in the day, Muhammad marrying a 6-year-old would have been fine. Because Islam has changed as well. So, that Charlie's not making a good case here, but Sneako really has no leg to stand on.
Agree with the law of the land. Where would you
because
get?
everyone
if
has
you-
their own individuality.
Individuality has nothing to do with morals. Your personal
It does, because your morals are formed from your personal experiences
No.
and from what you take in around you from the people around you.
Okay, but if you take it in from the people around you, then incest would be okay if everybody was
No,
doing it.
wouldn't. If you personally didn't agree with
But again, this is just a fact. Like, you take in the morals from the people around you. Sneako has taken in his morals from the people around him that he's surrounded himself with in Islam. If you are born in a different country, there are some things that are pretty universal, but in different countries, certain things are not going to be taboo or are going to be more acceptable than in other countries. That's just the reality of the way things are, and a lot of times it's going to be based off of like a religious text or something like that, and it's going to be different in different places. And so, like, you're just never going to have an entire world that accepts the Quran as, the one moral standard, or the Bible as the one moral standard. It's going to be different all over the place. And we had morality long before the Bible was ever written, long before the Quran was ever written, long before religion was ever a thing. It was probably very crude, but, from what we can tell from archaeology and anthropology, is that morals kind of naturally arose as we evolved, and as tribes figured out what worked and didn't work. As small tribes, we figured out, as hunter-gatherers, if we're constantly fighting each other and killing each other, we're not going to survive. We need to work together. And so we're not going to kill each other anymore. At some point we decided, we want to be monogamous, and we don't like it when somebody else sleeps with our wife. So we're going to decide that, adultery is immoral. And then eventually it seems that as tribes grew bigger and bigger, it's kind of harder for a tribal leader or something like that to keep everyone in line. Then it kind of becomes easier to codify those morals that already existed into a religion. And if you have this kind of devotional and discipline aspect to it, it's a lot easier to have a civilized society if everyone kind of has these foundational core beliefs. And that was, very beneficial for evolution for a long time. But now, I think for the most part, we can be good people, have good morals, care about being good people and care about having good morals outside of religion. It's not a necessary thing to have those things.
It wouldn't be. Like, if you want, like, I don't know why you're doing the argument a little incorrectly, but I know where you're trying to go. But the point is, like, the fact of the matter is, people will always have their own perspectives on things, unless, of course, you just follow what you are told 100% of the time. Like, for you, you're pushing back against the age of consent because you don't like being told that this is what it is based on this. You believe that, well, actually, there's a couple other extenuating circumstances in these cases.
That's not what I believe in. My belief comes from something that's consistent. It comes from the Islamic way. It comes from the Islamic way because nothing else makes sense.
So that's not really an argument. Plenty of other ways of ways that cultures and religions do marriage makes perfect sense. He could say that, I believe that the Islamic way is the best way for, happy marriages, the best way for people to thrive and for societies to thrive. But to say that any other way doesn't make sense is kind of incoherent.
The Western way is always adapting, and now we allow people to change their genders, something that was admonishable only 10 years ago. See, you're following the ever-changing...
Right. It's good to adapt. It's good as we learn more about humans, as we study more about them. It's good to adapt our practices. Even if there's not like morality attached to it.
Changing morality only 10 years ago, a man becoming a woman was a mental illness. It was something that was shamed upon. 10 years ago, if Chris Tyson was going on a Mr. Beast video and he was there dressed up like a girl and he was saying that I'm taking puberty blockers, hormone blockers, everybody would admonish him. In a lot of places, he would be excommunicated. He would say, absolutely, I do not want kids to take hormone blockers and change themselves forever. But today, that's allowed. Today, that's pushed. Today, that's okay. And then everybody else kind of falls into suit. There are a small minority of people in the West, people that believe in God, they say that this is absolutely wrong, and then they get banned for it. You can't follow the people that are around you, the ever-changing morality.
You can't follow a line of questioning. You keep going off onto these tangents. Look.
Right, and so to speak to that, that is not a coherent argument at all. Like, you could say, 100 years ago, it was, or 150, 200 years ago, it was fine to own slaves. But now it's not. What are we doing? Now you get shamed if you own slaves? Now it's illegal to own slaves? What are we doing? Right, so you need to make a case for why a certain thing should have been shamed or why it was good that it was the way it was for so long. And then you need to make a case for why it's bad that we've changed now. With transgenderism, we've seen that this has been something that has been a part of our evolution for a long time, that transgender people have been a reality in society for a long time, where they are born with an incongruence in how they feel in their mind versus the body that they were born in. And we've seen that there's a spectrum to gender. There's even a spectrum biologically, right? Like some people are, born with certain chromosomes where they, technically should be a man, but they look like a woman, and vice versa. There are people who are born who look like men, who have vaginas. There are people who are born that look like women, who have penises. And so even just there, biologically, everything is not black and white. And so it just makes sense that as far as gender goes, gender expression and how you feel about yourself on the inside, that there are probably going to be some people who are born with an incongruence in their body versus how they feel about themselves on the inside. And we've just seen that this has been the case for a very long time in our history. And as we have learned more about people, as we have studied this more, we have seen that helping them kind of bring in line their body to match how they feel about themselves on the inside is one of the best forms of treatment that we can provide for these people to help them live happy and fulfilled lives. Gender reassignment surgery has like a 1% regret rate, which is one of the lowest out of any surgery around. Knee surgeries have an incredibly high, like 30 or 40% regret rate. Spinal surgeries have like a 40 to 50% regret rate. But sex reassignment surgeries have a very incredibly low regret rate. And so, I think obviously we need a lot more studies in this area. We need to learn a lot more in this area to make sure that we are helping people the best way that we can to help them live happy and fulfilled lives. And there's just not a good case to be made outside of religious reasons as to why we should not allow these people to live life expressing as the gender that they feel aligns with them on the inside. So yeah, I mean, again, keep doing research, keep doing studies, make sure that we are, not harming people as much as we can, make sure that we are helping them as much as we can. But there's just not a good case to be made for not allowing them to live life as they choose in that area.
Look, at the end of the day, man,
It's not a tangent.
you can believe whatever
It's
you
not a
want to
tangent.
believe. But the point is, people are always going
No,
to
no,
have
no, no,
their
no, no, no.
perspectives.
You
I don't
can't,
see that.
you cannot believe just whatever you want to believe. You cannot.
That's what you are doing.
If you believe bestiality is wrong, you should not be in society. If you believe incest is okay, you should not be within the community. You should be excommunicated. These are things that there's some certain morality that should supersede the government. That should supersede something. The government
And
should
that's
not.
the age of consent for you.
It's not the age of consent. It's
you should stay on topic here. Because
I'm staying on
these
topic.
Are going, what you are doing is you are deflecting to other topics. You have still not directly said that you think it is a bad thing for an adult to marry a child. Like, you are still unable to say that. Now,
But you haven't even defined child.
So the thing is that like Sneako, like things that he thinks are bad or sinful, he can't really give you a case for why he thinks that they are bad. Aside from, this is what the Quran teaches us, or, it creates degeneracy in society. But he doesn't really have like a, as much as he wants to say it's an objective foundation, he doesn't really have a good reason for those things. Charlie more so does. He's not doing a great job of arguing for his positions, but as someone like a secular humanist can give you very good reasons for why they believe something is right or wrong. All right, so this is kind of not really going anywhere. A lot being said without really anything being said. No real good points are being made. I'm going to skip to the point now where this has really kind of been the only takeaway from this conversation. I think Charlie whiffed a little bit on this. This is regarding transgenderism, but let's get into it.
Do you believe that somebody can go through hormone therapy? Can they change their gender if they're a child?
I think that's totally fine as long as everyone is consenting, as you agree with.
Okay, so as long as everyone...
If your parents are okay with it and you are okay with it, I think that's totally a familial decision to make, yeah.
Okay, so a child can cut their penis off and take hormone blockers and change their biology forever, but they can't get married?
Well, that's a decision that now extends beyond the family, because now you're bringing in a different party. So if you have some...
So the answer there is just a lot of ignorance on Sneako's part. But I would say for like the majority of transgender people, transgender cases, a lot of it is just going to be kids socially transitioning. And then like starting hormones, that is something that they can start around 16, 17 with parental consent. And to me, I think that's something that we need to continue doing studies on and make sure, figure out the kind of long-term effects of this and see if this is what is best for treating gender incongruence and gender dysphoria. As of right now, it seems to be one of the better ways to treat that. And then, but the most common thing is puberty blockers, which has been used for decades to treat precocious puberty. We have a lot of data on long-term effects of it. And basically it puts a pause on puberty so that the kid can grow older and be able to make a more informed decision on further transition down the road when they have kind of been able to live with it longer and receive treatment and see if that's the best way to go. I think that is a good option. And if they decide afterwards that I don't really want to go through with the transition for whatever reason, maybe they still identify as the opposite gender, but they just don't want to go through transition. They can go off of the puberty blockers and then go through puberty like normal. And so, again, I think, we constantly need to be studying this and make sure that, we are doing, the most good that we can do for these people and not harming them. Anytime you're doing any sort of medical intervention, it's not ideal. You're going to be doing some sort of harm. Whether it's any sort of surgery, like you never want to be cutting into the body, is not good. It doesn't, your body will never be the same. As great as our procedures are these days, your body will never be the same. And so the thing there is to decide if the risk or the damage done to make that medical intervention is worth it. Or, if that potential harm is going to be more or less than the harm that would be caused if there was no medical intervention. And, we've seen that when there is no medical intervention with transgender people, their outlook is not very good. And so, I definitely believe in like strong screening procedures in therapy, to make sure that it's not a flippant thing that it's being done. But at the end of the day, I think that it's something that should be between parents, children, and their doctors. And so, the difference here is that, you are born with this condition, this gender incongruence or gender dysphoria, and we know that in order for these people to live happy and healthy lives, that the best treatment for them is transitioning of some sort. And like surgeries, that is just like bottom surgery especially, is just not even an option for anyone under 18. I believe top surgery is a possibility for people like 16, 17 with permission. But like we also do like breast augmentation for people under 18, women under 18, with parental permission. There's a lot of other cosmetic surgeries we do with parental permission under 18. And so, you have to make a good case for why one is okay and not the other. Yeah. And like Sneako's point here, Sneako again doesn't have a leg to stand on because his thing is with marriage, is as long as everyone's consenting, and the person is mature, that they're an adult. He believes they're an adult, so really they should be able to make whatever choice they want as far as transitioning, at whatever age that is. So he doesn't really have a leg to stand on with that, but it does point to a perceived inconsistency with Charlie, who's like, one of his argument is that, this is like a, permanent thing that you're locking a child into, they can't consent to. It's like, okay, well, why can they not consent to marriage, but they can consent to, transitioning? And, it's different because, it's a medical intervention, a procedure that is helping them, with a disorder that they have. It's either gender incongruency or gender dysphoria that is making their life worse, and this thing would make their lives better. In most cases. And getting married and sleeping with an older person just is not the same thing. Yeah, so it's, again, it's something that should be between medical professionals and parents and children. And I think really the big onus is on medical professionals to make sure that they are doing no harm as much as possible, and make sure that the procedures that they're doing are beneficial to people. And I'm all for scrutinizing that process and making it better as much as we can. But yeah.
Someone that's your age coming in saying, I want to marry that child. I don't think that can happen under any circumstance.
So,
no.
But it's still a personal decision. You're still deciding.
Because there's
take the other party out of the equation. It's a personal decision. If I'm 16 and I personally want to marry this girl, she's beautiful. She's 21 years old. Her family wants to do it. My family wants to do it. You're saying I can't do that. We're both consenting.
So things like, and again, the other thing in play here is the permanence of it. Like, I don't think that people under 18 should be able to go through something like bottom surgery. And I think, to me personally, I think 18 is a good age for like hormone therapy. But I'm willing to be flexible on that, deferring to medical professionals. But again, but most of the treatments offered to minors are not permanent. They are reversible, and so in a lot of cases, it's just like socially transitioning. And so again, that's another difference. For some reason, people have in their minds that it's like common practice for kids to be having their penises chopped off. That just does not happen. It's not something that happens. Even things like hormone therapy for like 16, 17-year-olds is very uncommon. There's just like a long process that they go through before they start doing stuff like that. And if they do, it's because they're trying other things and other things aren't working. And it's not easing the gender congruency. Therapy is not easing it. And, at that point, further intervention is what often does the trick for these people. And so it's just like a lie that, kids are having their penises chopped off.
I'm ready to go. I'm physically mature, but I'm not allowed to marry because Moist says that woman's a pedophile. But if then the next day I leave it, I'm depressed, I want to cut my penis off, I can go right into the clinic, snip it off, and start taking HRT like Chris Tyson. That's a society that makes sense to you?
It is. I believe everyone has I believe everyone has the right to do with their body what they want to do.
Okay, 100%. But so everyone has the right to do with their body, but not when it comes to a sacred marriage where they have kids, where they add to society.
That's no longer just you.
That is your body.
Bringing someone in.
Okay, you're still bringing in the doctor to use the scissors to snip off your penis.
He's not there for the rest of your life. He's not constantly there at your fucking house monitoring you.
You don't need to be there. You're not glued to your wife. You're not there like Siamese twins. You
are a 16-year-old. You are entirely reliant on this adult that you've now brought in.
No, you're not. You can still have parents. Maybe I'm making my own money. I'm not reliant. If I'm 16 and I marry a 21-year-old and I'm making a lot of money and I'm doing well and I'm independent, I'm not reliant upon her. Not only that, the person that you just put through transgender therapy, now they need to go to therapy once a week. Now they need to go to the pharmacist once a week. Look how many people are involved now. Now they're going to therapy groups. Now they're online. They're making YouTube videos. They're in a Mr. Beast.
Yeah, like being transgender is not like it's not a fun time. It's a hard thing to live with. It's a hard thing to go through. But we found that receiving transitional treatment is one of the best forms of treatment. Like conversion therapy doesn't work and often makes people kill themselves. Praying it away doesn't work. Trying to force them into a box doesn't work. Going through therapy doesn't work. Religion doesn't work. These things just don't work. It's not like a social contagion thing. It's something that's been around for a long time.
Challenge. This person is relying on so many people, and they also have. You're cutting out again. You're cutting out. Chad, is it me or him?
And it's like it's the same thing with like if you have extreme anxiety or depression as a child, like obviously I think first you should do everything you can to make sure that you are in a safe and non-stressful environment, and then do everything you can first to try to naturally ease that anxiety or depression. But then if that persists, if there is a disorder there, yeah, you're going to treat for the anxiety and depression. And yeah, you're going to have to go to therapy. And yeah, you're going to have to go to a doctor's appointment. And yeah, you're going to have to take medicine, which is all not ideal. Nobody wants to be doing that. It's not fun. But it's better than the alternative of living and developing with untreated anxiety and depression, which makes life miserable, which is something that I went through, by the way. I had severe clinical depression at the age of like 12 or 11 that went untreated until I was like 26. And then it took like 4 years for me to figure out like a good mix of medication to help me. And that was just incredibly detrimental to my life. Yeah, I may have been like a little different if I was on meds. I may have been like a little more like chilled out. Who knows? But I know my life would have been way better. My life was a living hell for a long period of my life. I didn't get treatment for it. For religious reasons, because I was the religious family that I was raised in, stigmatized mental health and medication. And so I believe that it was my fault that I was depressed and that I wasn't, in right standing with God. It was my sin that was causing depression. And then as I got older and, I was out on my own, I just still had this fear of taking medication. Like it was just so stigmatized for me that it really took me reaching rock bottom before I decided like, okay, like I don't want to unalive myself. I don't want to, I don't want to do that. I want to stick around. So like if the meds make me unalive myself, then, I'm going down that path anyways. And so I tried it, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made. It saved my life. But it wasn't easy. Like I said, it took 4 years to really figure out a good mix of medication that worked for me. And sometimes I would take medication and it would make me feel worse. But it was worth fighting for. And it was worth going through the hassle of having to do that. And it was better than the alternative. Again, like I said, medical intervention is never ideal. It's never fun, but it's just a matter of weighing out the alternative.
Because you said it's because you're relying on other people. But I've established that a trans person is relying on the pharmacist, is relying on the therapy.
I didn't say that. I didn't say relying. I said you are making a personal decision yourself. You are making a decision for you. When you are making a decision about marriage, you're bringing someone else in that is now not.
So I think that Sneako is talking about the child transitioning, and I think that Charlie is probably talking about an adult transitioning, and I think that they're talking past each other a little bit here. Charlie is just talking about in general the idea of adult an adult being able to transition, and that's just like a choice that you're making for yourself as an adult or as a child, honestly. But I think Charlie's specifically talking about child here, and then Sneako was talking about a child doing this. And I guess for some reason bringing a doctor into the mix is the same as marrying someone and bringing a partner into the mix for the rest of your life.
Not just you.
Just
You are
because you're bringing
in-
someone else in does not change the fact that it's a personal decision. Marriage is it's consent. It is deciding yes, regardless of the other person.
But
it's still a personal
child
decision.
Can't possibly wrap their head around this adult that has been preying on them. Like, I don't know why you can't see that. A 16-year-old can't be making this decision on this adult who is convincing them that I am the right choice for you for life.
Right. But a 9-year-old boy can go into a clinic and decide that doctor, that 40-year-old doctor, can cut my.
Right, and that's just such a dumbass argument because that doesn't happen for a reason. Yeah, nobody thinks that should happen, and it doesn't happen. Pretty much all the treatments that are done are, anytime before puberty, it's going to be all like therapy and social transitioning, if anything. And then, right up to puberty, you're going to start puberty blockers. Because going through puberty can be an incredibly devastating thing for a transgender person to go through. Before puberty, you're still very like androgynous. But after puberty, it changes your body forever, and it can make it much harder to transition, in the way that you may like to later on. And we kind of agree that right at puberty is not a good time to be making those permanent decisions. And that is why we use puberty blockers to just put a pause on puberty so that they can get a little bit older and be able to make more of an informed decision when they're older, preferably, I think, when, around when they turn 18. And yeah, I mean, there's going to be some bad outcomes, as there are with any medical intervention. But from everything we've seen statistically and study-wise, it seems to be very successful and a good way to help transgender people live happy and fulfilling lives.
Penis off?
If that's a decision he and his family wants to make, that doesn't bother me. It absolutely does not bother me.
Okay. So then why?
That's just a dumbass. That's, oh my God. Yeah, Charlie is not. I mean, good on Charlie for, being pro transgender, but that's just not. That's not a transgender, a pro transgender stance. That's not something people believe in doing. That's not something that happens. That is that really makes the cause look bad. Yeah, that was not a good answer.
Why is it that bringing someone else into that marriage, why does that then make it?
But also, like, these people here, like Sneako and like others, especially in America, most of them aren't going to say shit about circumcision, of which over 100 baby boys die from complications of a year. They don't say shit about that. They don't care about that.
Get wrong.
Because it could be an adult with a child, which is that is an unacceptable dynamic under every possible circumstance.
In the doctor's office, in that gender therapy forever, it's still an adult and a child cutting off the penis, Moist.
You are not living with that fucking doctor. You have made a decision.
You're living with the decision of that doctor to cut the penis off. It's still living with the decision of another person too.
And that's life. You live with decisions. Some people might regret it, sure. But within this marriage with an adult, that is a decision that is now, once they are in your life, it can be out of your hands. You can have this adult come in and just start beating the shit out of you. You can have all kinds of things. When you're with getting your penis cut off, You have made a decision.
Okay, wait, you're saying you can get
beat
beat up? You can still get beat up out of marriage.
You absolutely can. But a child is never going to be thinking about things like that because they can't. A child can't consent to marrying an adult.
So why is a child smart enough to decide that he's now a woman that needs puberty blockers and cutting his penis off, but he can't decide upon marrying somebody that he's in love with?
How does he know he's in love with them?
It's a feeling. It's something that you know. You talk to your family, you decide. How does a child
being in love with an adult?
Yes,
I think a sensible family.
Yes, I'm 16. I meet a 21-year-old woman. I say, "Mom, Dad, I'm in love with this girl. I want to marry her. I feel like I'm in love. She's the right person for me. I want to do it." She's like, "Yes, yes, yes." Everyone's good. But that same a 9-year-old.
I'm gonna just say, thank fucking God, I did not marry who I was in love with at 16. You know, we were roughly the same age. Would have been no problem there, like, morally, but thank fucking God I did not marry. And I think most people would agree. Thank fucking God. Like you're talking about like your first boyfriend, pretty much. First, maybe second boyfriend. Thank fucking God you did not marry the first person you dated as a teenager. Not like that's just, oh my God, that's psychotic.
Year-old could say, "Mom, Dad, I want to cut my penis off," and you're going to say that's good. But a 16-year-old who feels in love, who's ready to commit, who's financially independent, that person cannot get married.
A 16-year-old will never be financially independent, A, and B.
Oh, you should see my whole team. Yes, do you know how many people that I work with that are financially ready?
You work with a lot of 16-year-olds?
Yes,
that are
I do.
Financially ready?
I work with the person who runs my Telegram. I have clippers. I have a lot of teenagers who are making more than my professors. They are ready. They're mentally, these people are mature. They're boxing every single day. They are more mature than a lot of the 24-year-olds I know that went to school with.
I can tell you right now, they're not mature enough to have a relationship with another person, to have a happy and fulfilling marriage. They're not. They're making a lot of money chopping up clips on Final Cut Pro. That doesn't make you mature.
With that are still in their hometown doing nothing, eating popcorn every day and cutting their dick off like you believe. These people are ready to go because maturity changes for different people. For you to decide that a kid could cut his penis off but he can't get married makes absolutely no sense, and that's a society that crumbles. That's a society that allows that's your incest.
The society that flourishes is the one where a 14-year-old can marry someone in their 20s, Sneako. Yeah, that makes a lot more sense.
Marriage is how society progresses because you need to create more life. Marriage, children should only be within a marriage. They should only be conceived within a marriage where they're not going around sleeping with different people, where they're not confused, where they're not a part of the community that has the highest suicide rate. They should not be a part of that. I want to be in a society full of happy married people that are ready to have children, that are God-fearing.
And those happy married people are sometimes in your world 14, 15, 16 years old.
Absolutely. If they are ready,
that's so fucked
if they are ready to get married.
So I'm about done with this. It's been a long time. Like Sneako is like positing some good moral questions. Like, is it morally wrong for a 17 and a 16-year-old to get married? You know, I think that it would depend, right? It may be different in different cultures. I think in American culture, it's unwise. You know, for two teenagers who, you know, you're going to call adults because they have reached some arbitrary level of maturity in your mind. You know, let's just say they're two 15-year-olds. Well, there's no like, you know, it's not like something predatory, but like you believe they're adults now and they want to get married and they have like financial success and everything. There's a lot of reasons why that might be very unwise in American culture. In other cultures, especially like tribal cultures, stuff like that, you know, it might make more sense. And so, you know, but like Sneako is not able to really like have that conversation. But what Sneako really needs to contend with is the fact that like what he's advocating for is not just like, going back in the olden days to where, 15-year-olds got married to other 15-year-olds. What he's advocating for is, and what would happen is, again, what already does happen in these states where child marriage is legal, where you have 30, 40, 50, 60, 70-year-olds marrying 12-year-olds. So, Sneako is like kind of bringing some interesting moral questions, but he's not really contending with the logical conclusion of what he is arguing for. And then Charlie is bringing like very common sense questions and arguments to the table, but he's not doing a good job of defending his arguments. The transgender argument here is horrendous. Very bad. Like there's just no world in which we need to be saying it's okay for 9-year-old boys to be going through bottom surgery. And I just don't know of any, like most transgender people, most transgender advocates would agree with that. Most doctors are going to agree with that. So I don't know why he would bite that bullet. Yeah. So at the end of the day, it's really like Sneako is arguing for kind of a utopian olden days view of things, but I think he's really romanticizing those time periods and romanticizing what it would be if we went back to that. Like we have changed, we have evolved for a reason. And I think that it helps people kind of grow into who they are. And it minimizes predatory behavior. But yeah, I mean, this was like, I really wish Charlie would have done like some hardcore debate prep, or this had been like a conversation with anyone else. Like recently, Sneako had that conversation with Destiny and XQC where he just absolutely got washed on this whole age of consent thing. And it seems like anytime like he sits down with like an Islamic apologist or leader or something like that, like he's not really interested in the religion. He's just like, he just wants like talking points to argue with people. And then there's a time where I think like he was in the UK and he got absolutely washed by like a college level Christian apologist and just like didn't have any answers for it. And so I think it's, again, like I said, he is a bot. He is blown about by the winds of whatever his surroundings are. It was kind of the red pill for a little bit, and then kind of, I think, being involved with that got him close to Islam, and that's kind of the track he's on now. And he doesn't really care enough about it to... It's just like something that he is wearing as a aesthetic. It's not something that's like really... something that he's really taking in and taking to heart. And I think that that's really what he has done since he really became popular. This was disappointing conversation. I don't think it really got anywhere. I don't think it's really gonna... I think it made Sneako look a little silly, and I think it made Charlie look silly. All anyone is talking about is this transgender take. And for some reason, no one is talking about how Sneako was saying that it's fine for a 25-year-old to marry a 15-year-old. But yeah, I mean, that's it. That's all I got for this reaction. Thank you for watching. Let me know what you think about this interaction. What do you think about the age of consent? Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Peace.